the dark truth about biblical masculinity. I'm going to tell you guys something. You've all been told masculinity looks a few ways by the mainstream church. The church. Alright, you go to a church, about 90% of America will tell you these type of things. What is masculinity? 1, being nice. 2, turning the other cheek. 3, listening to your wife. 4, and this embodies about 90% of the things you're told. Let me tell you guys something. All of this stuff is wrong. It's biblically wrong, and it's also wrong for your own well-being. Let's get into it. So let's go over these point by point. All right? Get read. First, being nice. Now, as I've talked about earlier in this stream, we'll go with a different angle here. You, as a man, have an obligation towards one thing above all, and that is submission to the truth. Okay? And the truth, you think of it, what is the truth? Right? You think of truth, you think of something being correct, it's like 2 + 2 = 4. What is it? The truth is God. This is how we epistemically ground truth. Right? God is truth. And God is unchanging. God is infallible. So there can be a concept of truth. Right? So ultimately, through our submitting to truth, you're submitting to God. And truth only comes from God, so don't take it as like, oh, well, you're talking about like science and like evolution, whatever. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the truth that comes from God. And the only grounding for truth that could possibly be. Realize it's not about being nice. It's not submission to being nice. And sometimes telling the truth requires you not to be nice. There's plenty of examples in the Bible of this. One of the things you're always going to hear about Jesus is that, oh, Jesus was like this super nice person. I'm going to tell you something. Is it a nice thing to call someone a homosexual slur? That's what Jesus did. Let me pull out this comment real quick. Now, I can't really say this word on YouTube, so should I say it? I'm so tempted to say because I say it so much. Yeah. So, malakos. This was used in Matthew 11:8. And this is Jesus speaking. But what did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, those who wear soft clothing are in kings' palaces. Now it seems like soft, but what is the word used here? Malakos. Well, what does malakos mean? It does mean soft, but in a metaphorical sense, it's effeminate, of a Catamite, of a boy kept for homosexual relations with a man, a male who submits his body to unnatural lewdness, or of a male prostitute. So in other words, this is like calling someone a am I going to get banned? I don't know. I don't want to say. Matthew 11:8. It's also in Luke 7:25, and Paul used it as well. Right here. Yeah. Neither the sexually immoral, nor the adulterous, nor the effeminate. When we use the word effeminate, we use the word malakos. And this is what we're talking about. So Jesus used that word, and there's a certain word that this is basically akin to in English. So that's going to be one of my favorite words to use. Now what? Okay? Now what is this in literal sense? This is, those look like 6s, not G's. There we go. One of my favorite words right there. So what does this word mean in a literal sense? It means sticks. A bundle of sticks. But in a metaphorical sense, we know what it means, right? So the word is used in a similar way here. Because when you think of like, oh, the kings wear soft clothing, I mean, there's a double meaning to that. Traditionally, the church fathers that interpreted that verse took it as a double meaning as well. And also, I mean, if you say, who says this word while referring to a bundle of sticks? Like, if you say this word, we know what you're talking about, okay? So, in any case, That's not very nice, is it? Is it very nice to call people, say their father's the devil? Because, okay, let's grant you something. You're like, oh, well, he meant soft. Okay, I find that a little bit hard to believe, but okay. Is this very nice to say right here? John 8:44. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry your father's desires. Is it nice to say to people that their father's the devil? And it's kind of like, that's worse than calling someone a slur. Is it nice to drive people out of the temple with a whip? Is this a nice thing to do here? Jesus put together a whip out of stripes of leather and chased them out of the temple. So, these things aren't very nice, but what is it tied to? Truth. So your obligation is not to be nice. Your obligation is to tell the truth. Now sometimes, and many times actually, it's a good thing to be nice. It's not a good thing to just be a mean person for the sake of being mean. But at the same time, you should not be focusing on being nice over telling the truth, which is something that the church has taught men to do countless times. Next, turn the other cheek. I made a whole video about how this verse is actually talking about an insult, right? It doesn't mean actually getting hit. It means the insult of getting hit in the cheek. So, turn the other cheek. Make this turn to docile. Don't worry, everything I say will be free, but I will suggest very heavily that you join my Discord because you can get one-on-one access with me. You can ask me a question on there. I will answer it in there as of now, at least. It's not too crazy yet. And you also gain access to uncensored information in Discord channel, which I cannot share on YouTube. There's also more general, broad information and niche information on different subjects that are not touched on in this video, most likely. Being said, find that in the description. Let's get back to the video. So, this perverts justice. So, no justice. Because what do they use this for? They use this for saying, okay, well, if someone does something wrong, you shouldn't punish them for it. And, of course, there's a Christian imperative towards focusing on redeeming and uplifting over punishing. However, punishment, I mean, it's all over the Bible. I mean, hell is a real thing. Hell. Hell is hell is the epitome of punishment, right? And justice is very important. God is not just merciful, He is just. And men are supposed to be merciful but just at the same time. And what they use this turn the other cheek verse for is try to immute justice. They try and suppress justice by using this verse. So this is against the idea of getting mad. No, you're a man. I'm not saying get mad and being emotional, but you're a man. Sometimes it's justified to get mad and use that anger towards a good purpose. Right? Christianity does not teach you to be docile, and everything I said here applies towards that docile nature. Next, listening to wife. So this goes to the destruction of gender roles. If you don't know what a gender role is essentially what you are supposed to do as a man or a woman. So churches are basically terrified of saying that females can't be pastors, females should stay home, and men should be strong and be patriarchal because the Bible says that women should submit to the husband as they do to God. They're afraid to say these type of things. They're afraid to say the verse where it says, I do not give authority to a woman to teach in a church because of the fall. Right? Because Eve transgressed. The serpent targeted Eve, not Adam. They're terrified of saying these things. And it's more of that, oh, docile, oh, be nice. This is biblical. This whole idea of, oh, just listen to your wife. Your wife says something, you better do it. That's the attitude Adam had. And then all of humanity got doomed. And don't come in the comments being an incel going, oh, yeah, women suck, dude. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they have a place. As men do have a place. I'm very patriarchal. But, honestly, a lot of the issues with women, I think, can boil down to men because who's teaching them? Who's their authority, right? You can't take the based route of saying, well, women listen to men, and, women do this and women do that, and then saying, well, it's women's own fault. It doesn't really logically make sense. The gender roles. Right? So it's very important to be a man. And more importantly, it's important to tell women how to be a woman, because, the Bible's written by men, right? God became a man. He didn't become a woman. And it's not to say that, when it comes to masculine and feminine traits, when it comes to nurturing, when it comes to the concept of submission, that's within God in the sense of, for example, the father, the son submits to the father in his humbling and self-kenosis, right? It's not submission as in, what's the word? That's subordination. It's not subordination, right? He still has the power, same power as God, but it's submission in the sense of he submitted to the Father's will in going to earth, self-emptying. As church fathers talk about, that's in the Bible, right? So it's within God. These feminine things are within God, in that sense. Okay? I don't mean feminine as in painting nails and being homo. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the more highbrow, higher level stuff. To be a man, right? It applies for men. And be a woman. It applies to women. So don't be afraid. I'm telling the truth. Don't be afraid to say, woman, you need to do this. Woman, you need to do that. As long as that is what's in the Bible, because that's the truth. Okay? Embrace being a man. If you embrace being a man, you also find that women will start embracing you because they'll like it. I personal experience with that, and I've worked with people. There's plenty of stories where they were kind of timid, like, oh, I don't know if I should, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. I made them a little bit more misogynistic, quote unquote, and boom, things started clicking for them. So, you know what I'm saying? From a attraction perspective, but even if that wasn't true, you still do it because that's the biblical truth. That's what the Bible teaches. And what Christianity traditionally teaches as well. So, those are the dark truths about biblical masculinity. They're dark in the sense that they're very taboo. No one wants to talk about them. Or no one wants to say it in the way I'm saying it. But it has to be said. And hopefully, my saying of it will help you say it, and we can start changing a bunch of Christian men to stop being a bunch of that one. Okay, it's 3 videos down. All right. Next. What's the next one? Let's look at my list. Okay, we're telling stories now. 2 stories in a row. Alright, this is going to be for all you gooners out there. 1 Timothy 2:12, correct. That is the verse about women not being able to teach in churches. And they cope so much, they always say, like, oh, it's because, there was... And even Cliff said this. I've never really been a big fan of Cliff. But, everyone's like, oh, Cliff. Even Cliff was like, well, there's these difficult questions. It's because there was Empress, and that Empress was, leading a bunch of confusion. But it's just not a good exegesis, because Paul said it's because of the fall. He said it's because women transgressed in the fall. That's why it's happening. He didn't say because you're sowing discord and you're sowing confusion. He didn't say that. So let's just cope. Let's cope from people that are scared to say, yeah, a woman can't do that. So, that whole situation is a pretty explication of what I'm talking about. Yeah, cocked. True.